Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the February 24th, 2025 workshop of the Orlando City Council. Council members, we're here for an important workshop. In years following the Pulse tragedy, creating a permanent memorial to honor the 45 lives that were taken has proven to be a challenging endeavor. And in fact, we had a foundation that failed, but just a few years ago, they had actually planned to build the memorial somewhere other than the actual Pulse site. And in late 2023, we listened to a number of the families and survivors, and they expressed their very strong desire that a lasting memorial be located at the site on South Orange. And the hurt and the pain that they shared solidified our belief that we needed to make that memorial happen. Just over a year ago, the city purchased the Pulse site with one goal to expedite the creation of a permanent memorial. And over the past 6 months, we've been fortunate that the members of the Pulse Memorial Advisory Committee have helped guide that important effort by representing those who were impacted by the tragedy. They have quickly and responsibly moved the process forward. Throughout a difficult and emotional time, they have been thoughtful, they have been focused, and they have recommended a conceptual design that you will see this morning. Commissioners, please join me in thanking those committee members that are here today in the front row. Also want to thank Dr. Schooler and Raphael for engaging the families and the survivors, Jay and Wayne for providing their design expertise, and of course the members of our city team, many of who had worked in the Assistance Center back in 2016. So I'm going to call on my Chief of Staff, Heather Fagan, to begin the update. Heather.
Thank you, Mayor Dyer, and good morning, Commissioners. As we start today's presentation, I want to pause and start with a reminder of exactly why we are here today, and that's the 49 angels that were tragically taken for us on that horrific morning of June 12, 2016. As we start today's presentation, I want to begin with some background on how we got to this point. As Mayor Dyer stated, in 2023, as the One Pulse Foundation was dissolving, we heard directly from family members that it was their desire to have a permanent memorial on the Pulse site, which is why the City Council moved forward with purchasing that property in October of 2023. Since at that time the city had not been involved with the memorial planning, we had to take a pause to determine the best path forward. We ultimately decided the city leading that effort was the best path, and we also committed as a city to lead the annual remembrance ceremony and continue the community 5K run, as we heard that these events were important to the victims' families, the survivors, and our community as a whole. Central to the memorial process would be engaging with the family members and communicating with them and the survivors. We also recognized that due to a previously failed effort, there was a lot of conflict and uncertainty around the entire memorial process. Due to this, we felt that it was best to engage a third party to facilitate the process moving forward. So in April of last year, we engaged Dr. Larry Schooler with Public Participation Partners, who had served as the lead facilitator on similar projects, including the Virginia Beach 531 Memorial. Dr. Schooler brought with him to the team Raphael Montavo, who has facilitated a range of public processes in a variety of cultural settings, because we wanted to ensure that our Hispanic population could have a facilitation partner that spoke Spanish. Dr. Schooler in May started conducting focus groups that would help, and surveys which would help inform the process moving forward. After gaining feedback and reviewing other memorial processes around the country and from other tragedies, we determined that a committee comprised of victims' families, survivors, and other community members with expertise in areas of things like design, architecture, mental health, and the arts would be best to lead the effort to create a conceptual design for the permanent Pulse Memorial. So in June of last year, we launched an application process, and we had more than 150 people submit to serve on the committee. We didn't know what to expect. We were really pleased to receive that many submissions. The applications were then reviewed without name or personal identifying information by a group of community leaders who had been involved with the Pulse response. They would then make a recommendation to the mayor of individuals to serve on the committee. I'd like to recognize those community leaders that served in that role. Jakaya Bell with Heart of Florida United Way, Reverend Dr. Jose Rodriguez, Joelle Morales, and Jesse Arias with the director of the Orlando United Resiliency Fund. Then in July of 2024, after the selection of 18 members, we held our very first Pulse Memorial Advisory Committee meeting. We established that the memorial process would have 4 goals: gathering feedback and engaging with the families and survivors, ensuring that all engagement was available in both English and Spanish, and that sessions were presented both virtually and in person, recognizing that much of this population did not live here in the city. I'd like to note that this was the first time that this city held public meetings that were done completely in English and Spanish, both in person and virtually. We used headsets in the meeting so that the committee members could speak in the language that they were most comfortable with, or switch between English and Spanish without having to wait for a translator. I should note that that same service is available at today's workshop. The other 2 goals were ensuring a transparent process that included the opportunity for input throughout every phase, and then to advance the goal of selecting a conceptual design by the end of 2024 and the completion of a permanent memorial by the end of 2027. Donna next will go into a little bit why we missed our goal of 2024 called Mother Nature and Hurricanes. So Donna, as we began this process, we decided we needed somebody to help facilitate and serve as the liaison between the city and the Memorial Committee, which is why we hired Donna Weish. Many of you recognize her from her previous life as the Orange County Division Manager of Mental Health and Homeless Services. In that role, Donna served and responded to the Pulse shooting and was a key member of the team serving victims after the tragedy and the Family Assistance Center and the Orlando United Assistance Center. So after retiring and failing at retirement with Orange County, we are thankful that she brought her expertise here to the city. She will go into more detail about the memorial process, and then we'll have a presentation of the conceptual design from Wayne Dunkelberger, Chief Design Officer with Baker Barrios, and Jay Hood, Senior Landscape Architect with Catalyst Design, who generously volunteered their time, energy, and services to work with the committee to create this conceptual design that we have today, and ultimately a design control document to guide the RFP for the Pulse Memorial.
Thank you, Heather. Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. Good to see you. We're going to go into a little detail now about 3 phases of this process, which Heather has done a great job of teeing up. So one of the first things I did when I got here, when I realized what we were going to do, is I met with a friend of mine I've probably known for 25 years, and she is a national expert on cultural and linguistic competence, because we knew that was seriously important. We had to bring that skill to our staff, to our media outlets, and especially to our committee. Many of them don't live here. Many of them live other places, and they don't have access to being here in person. So we made sure that virtual options were made available to them, and all of those options were always in Spanish and English. What we wanted to do was, like the mayor said, we had some disappointed people. It's been 8 years. We hadn't moved the process to completion. A lot of disappointment, a lot of anger, and we needed to hear that. We needed to hear where people were, so we could meet them where they are. So we held focus groups. We held 10 of them in Spanish and in English, both virtual and in person, and we heard from them, all of it, and we took that and listened and brought that to the process. We established the opportunity for families and other community members to be engaged in this process. Heather talked about transparency. That's what we wanted. We wanted people to have input. We wanted to hear from them, not just families and survivors, but our community. They were invested in this. They hurt because of this. So we wanted to hear from them. We wanted to push information out to them, and we wanted to hear from them. So in June, like Heather said, the announcement of a memorial process of a committee was set. The community members that she mentioned that worked as what we would call consultants for us looked over 150 applications. They pored over those. Now, all 4 of those people have pretty serious jobs, and do a lot in our community in the way of advocacy, and they were all involved in Pulse in one way or another. Even Joelle working at the Family Assistance Center and helping us stand up the OUAC, Dr. Bell working at United Way and helping facilitate services from our AEAP grant that we were awarded. All of those folks had skin in the game. They wanted to be a part of this process. They wanted to help. So poring over those applications and coming up with 18 people who met the criteria that we set forth, families, survivors, people who had not only a vision because they were artists or architects or landscape architects, but they also had a personal connection in some way to the event. So as they came up with names, we were excited that they came back with people that we could choose 18 folks from. So as we contacted each one of them, and they committed their service, clearly they understood that this was going to be a tough process. They got it. They understood it, but they wanted to be the voice of our community. They wanted to be the voice of those families. They wanted to be the voice of those survivors. And so that 18 met all of our criteria. They had a varied experience, they were connected, and they wanted to be a part. They wanted to be the voice. This is a list of those 18 that served. And many of them are here today. And what I can tell you is that you can be proud of these folks that we've chosen. You can be proud that they came to this work 2 days a month and 4 hours of really hard conversations and hard work. 2 consecutive days, 4 hours a night, from 4 to 8 p.m. If you don't mind, Mayor, I'd like to ask them to please stand up and be recognized. Now, Mayor, all of them couldn't be here today. Some of them are watching as we speak. They all have a link. And I will tell you, we had planned, good planning, you know, we planned to start in July and end in December, and then kick off the new year with an RFP and move on. As Heather said, Mother Nature had other ideas. She thought we should miss 3 meetings and pick back up in February. But we spent that January, the consultants spent that January, Dr. Schooler and Raphael, really doing some robust outreach. These folks are hard to reach. It's 8 years, almost 9. Human spirit is very resilient. People move on. People don't want to dwell in the past. They want to get on with the grief process because it is a process. People don't want to hear from us sometimes. And so that was hard work. But we spent the month of January really trying hard by text, by email, by phone calls. And you can imagine, as people move around and are not necessarily in this country, they move physical addresses, they change email addresses, they change phone numbers. So reaching them was a difficult proposition, but I can tell you that was some very robust outreach that was provided. We talked about phase 3 being the engagement process, and that we did in the English and the Spanish, as we spoke of. All the meetings were conducted under sunshine. Everyone understood that, and our legal department was right there side by side to remind us all of that regularly. It included live public comments. At some point, one of our committee members said, you know what, 3 minutes may not be enough in public comment. So the committee, working on consensus as they did, agreed that we would go to 5. So all public comment went from 3 to 5 minutes to give families or survivors or community members time to really express their feelings to us, their thoughts on the process, and we thought that was really pretty positive. Our online feedback participation, we wanted so much of that again, to push information and to pull information in, so that the same thing the committee was seeing and talking about, they could too. And communications put up a platform called Engage Orlando, and you will see the results of some of those outreach methods at the very end here. Our engagement process in phase 3, again, was direct outreach. Those focus groups we talked about, the phone calls, the email, the social media, the text messages, and the snail mail. We even sent letters. We got lots of letters back. But our general outreach, paid advertising, we use news media, both the Spanish environment as well as the English environment, social media, newsletters. We did every possible thing to outreach as much as possible in our community. This is just a smattering of what our communications team did to engage our community survivors and family members. Talked about the Engage Orlando, pulseorlando.org, newsletters, media. You can see how many times people got on these sites and engaged with us. But this is the part you just can't say enough about. This is where the rubber hits the road. This is where these folks decided what elements they wanted to see in their memorial. The community weighed in on similar items that the committee came up with. It was very clear everybody was on the same sheet of music. Water is about healing. Water is about peace. They came up with one thing after another. You're going to hear from Jay Hood and Wayne Dunkelberger in a minute, but they were like a part of the committee. They were active listeners. They were empathetic. It was like they were meant to be there all along. And the hours they spent on a design that they would take information from committee members, they'd put it in a design, bring it to that meeting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, not leave until later that evening and much later in that evening. And then to do that and take the comments from the committee, go away, and the next day at 4 o'clock be right back there with those changes. Not a penny was spent on this group. Neither one of their agencies, organizations made any money off of this. They were clearly community partners who cared about this project. It was clear from day one. They spent time with individuals. There were a couple individuals that the design would come up and they were like, it just isn't speaking to me. And these were people that were in the field. They might have been architects and they might have been artists. So I remember Jay getting on a call, spending his time wanting to hear exactly what that committee member wanted to see. What is it missing? And those things have been, a number of those things really generated good conversation and positive outcomes, and they are in this memorial you will see today. I will have Jay and Wayne come take over.
Thank you. Thanks, Donna. Good morning.
Good morning.
Now the question is, all right, we'll do it this order. So yes, it has really been a very rewarding process to go through, and I feel like I've got a bunch of new friends now because we went through this battle together, and I think, and hopefully everybody will see the work that's gone into it. And the importance of this is just, I mean, we're just very honored. Both of our firms are honored to have been part of this. So just quickly through the things that we're going to talk about, we're going to talk a little bit about the process, this idea of a design control document. So what you're going to see now is really what's going to go out as part of that RFP package. So we're taking it up to this point, this design control document. Now the hard work happens where that's going to go out for, RFP, and people are going to make submissions on that. We'd like to have your input on this as well, because we've talked a lot with this committee, we've talked a lot with the public, but we haven't had a lot of direct response from you guys. So again, we're looking forward to your responses and also any input. And then we're going to talk about next steps. So just quickly on our process, this is like a 5D design process that we always talk about. It starts with desire, then we go through discovery, design, discussion, and then finally documentation. So we kind of followed these steps as we went through. From the standpoint of desire, that's one of the most important things, and one of the things that Raphael and Dr. Schooler did early on with the committee. They came up with the mission for the memorial. So I tend to try not to read PowerPoint slides, but I'm going to read these because I think there was a lot of wordsmithing that went into this. And really, this desire, this mission, this is how we test the design concepts and ideas from. Do they meet all these individual pieces? So, number one, sanctuary, tranquility, healing, reflection, and contemplation. So do all the design moves, do they reinforce that? Probably most importantly, remembering the 49 whose lives were taken in a culturally and linguistically sensitive way, recognizing their identities from multiple backgrounds and sexual orientations. Educating on the impact of Pulse on the community and the world. Love, hope, and acceptance, resilience, moving forward through adversity. And then a voice for all those affected. That's the survivors, first responders as well. And finally, and most importantly, honor and celebrate the lives that were brutally taken on June 12, 2016. So those are the criteria that we look through. So that was the desire. So from a discovery standpoint, now we're into kind of physical design things. We did a site analysis. We looked at design elements and we measured preferences through some exercises with the committee members. So from a site analysis, I think everybody is familiar with the site. So it's 1 acre, but this is also not just the Pulse site, but also the site that is to the west that's going to be acquired by the city, which actually has a pretty important component to it that's going to help us with with parking, with interpretation, and those types of things. Go ahead, Wayne.
Yep. Thank you, Jay. Also, what we did is we put some technology to this. We had to prove that things actually do work on this site. Everyone understands that Florida has a very challenging climate, especially in the summer. And as you know, the date is a summer time. And so we started to take our technology, apply it to the site, and really started to understand what makes this site work, both from sound, which you'll see in the number 2 slide, really how Orange Avenue affects how you feel in that space. And so we really started to mitigate that through design. In addition, temperature and sun daylight hours were also important to the study. So we came back with all of these studies, presented them to the committee, got their feedback, and what we'll present is based on this technology and some of the findings that we found.
Great. And then we talked about design elements. One of the exercises that we took the committee through, and I do want to stress that this design really has their fingerprints on it. It has been, we're the professional designers, but it really is interpreting the things that they've said, the things that they liked into it. So I think we had it, in a way, we had the easy part, but it was kind of easy. But it was very engaging, and there was a lot of honesty and trust throughout, which is, I think that was key, and that was built through that early work before we as the designers got on board. But so we ran them through some red dot, green dot exercises, which you kind of see on here. So, those are the types of things that you're trying to get a feel for what should this place look like.
And those were culled down. We went over 4 hours, 8 hours.
I think we had 16 boards full
Yes.
of those sheets, and so
Yes.
they went through a lot of images. And then we did several iterations of design back and forth. And as Donna said, they would come up with ideas. We'd respond to it either the next day or the next month. But so essentially, we started out with 3 design concepts. that were very rough, and then finally kind of landed up on one of them, which was this drawing that you see right there, and we've got some of the other images that with their dots on it in terms of preferences on there as well. And then that ended us to what we really ended up as kind of the, I'll say, consensus conceptual design, although it continued to be refined as we went through. So a little bit of orientation. Now, how do I get the laser pointer to work on this? There we go. Hold on. Oh. Oh, fantastic. Thank you. So essentially, just so everybody knows, this is Orange. We've got Cayley across the north, and then Esther Street on the south. So essentially, this is the Pulse site right here, and then this is that other piece that we're picking up as part of the design. But essentially, in terms of the overall organization of the site, this outline, and you'll see this throughout, that is the main memorial, and that's in the footprint. So we're respecting the footprint of the building. So that paved area that you see right there is the footprint. Generally, in the location of the dance floor, there's a reflection pool. But what kind of wraps all of this is this, what we're calling the angel ellipse. And so that's kind of like an organizing element that takes folks from kind of the parking area and what we'll call the visitor pavilion. And there's an existing building on site that we're going to renovate. And so that'll have interpretive indoor types of exhibits and such. And then this walkway, which is a covered walkway, kind of embraces the entire area. And we're envisioning interpretive elements along this ellipse, which has 49 columns on it, representing the 49 lives that were lost. But either those could be inspirational quotes, or we've got interpretive pieces that could follow along that. And then we've got gardens on the outside, but everything inside this is really where kind of the main memorial spaces are. So that's kind of the overall design. And then from a documentation standpoint, I already touched on that. This is really about putting together this design control document. So looking at this in 3D, this is kind of in that design control document, that RFP, if you will, that goes out, it's going to be set up by these various zones. So now we'll go into a little bit deeper detail on each of these zones, starting from up here at kind of the parking area and the visitor pavilion, working our way ultimately to the memorial site itself. Wayne, do you want to start with this
Sure.
parking plaza and then go through the building as well?
Yeah, with the inclusion of this new site and building, we thought it was a great opportunity to really allow people to park and to enter the site from the side of the building. We also know that there are items and articles that don't stand the test of time in the weather. We felt this would be a great building to start housing the things that were important to Pulse, to the memorial. And people could park on the street, they could park, handicap can park in the yellow area, enter the building, see some history. We also have some technology that we'll hit on a little bit later that will happen in there and explain some of the things that will go on. And then also, the building itself is a standard block building with a pitched roof. We do see the ability to actually reclad that or to reinterpret the building in a way in which respects the memorial, but also tells you that you're here. And so those were two important wayfinding items before you actually walk into the Pulse Memorial itself. And so the visitor pavilion zone is what we're calling it. And once again, air-conditioned, lit, manned. It would have various things could happen in there. We heard a lot from the committee, a lot of ideas that could happen inside of there. And in our design control document, we would list all of those things.
Yeah, and these bullet lists are kind of like the overall design components, but we will not read all those for you
No.
today.
Once again, an interpretation based on some input from the committee. This is a vision of what it could be, but also it is left up for the design team that is selected to prepare this vision.
Yeah.
Oh, we want it open. We do want glass. Once you go out to the site, you'll see a pretty heavily blocked building, but we do think it's important that you open it up, it be inviting. You come into the space and you feel comfortable in that space.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Nope.
And then in addition to that, we did want to connect the walkway, the path to the pavilion itself to really start to lead you on the journey.
So when we move from that, now we get into that the Survivors Common Site Zone. So you can see in the graphic that's up there, that's the area inside the ellipse and adjacent to the memorial. So, one of the things that happens out there on site today is that groups, family members, they get together to meet on site. So you don't necessarily want to be in the memorial, but to have a green space that's still enclosed within that ellipse, but is an open space. It's a park-like space where people can have gatherings. They can sit, they can contemplate, but it's outside of the memorial itself. So one of the things that we spent some time on the Survivors Commons is how do we actually celebrate them? So adjacent to the memorial, but outside of the memorial, again, that memorial site is kind of like the building. So outside of that, we're representing that Survivors Common. And so there will be some kind of plaque, an area, again, for seating and contemplation outside of the memorial proper. And then, again, that nice park-like space. And so we're even thinking about recycling or reusing some of the things that are out there for the temporary memorial, some of the seating elements that were placed out there now. I think it shows sustainability, but it also helps tell that history of even the Pulse Memorial.
I also think you added some trees in that view to
well,
help for the shading.
Yeah, well, and there's a lot of, actually some good trees that are there already, but then we're adding landscape as well. Again, trying to be climatically sensitive because we all know that, the summers can be brutal for us. As we kind of move along that angel ellipse, one of the things that became real important was kind of a private gathering area. So the private gathering area is a place where the family members can go to the side, kind of be off the path, but have a place where they can kind of celebrate and to remember, the angels that have been lost. One of the things that I think the committee members had seen on other memorials that they studied was a place where you could actually place mementos in the site. And so the little graphic on the bottom, that is essentially showing that we would have 49 spots, places underneath in this kind of like, if you look at this wall and seating area, this is a view inside of that area, that there would be like sectioned off places of that they could put mementos of their loved ones, and then that would be sealed in for perpetuity. But so it would be part of the monument. Thank you, Wayne. Yep. And again, this area is almost chapel-like from the standpoint of bringing in that color. But and one of the tricks is that we want this to be a private area, but we also want it to have transparency from a safety perspective. So you want to be able to see into that area. But again, a more intimate space that a small group could get together.
And we did talk a lot about safety and security, and we'll get to that too.
Yeah. The angel ellipse, again, we talked about that. It's kind of that organizing element that goes across the entire site. One of the important things, again, there's 49 of those columns that start once you pass the visitor pavilion. So what you'll see here, these thin columns, those will be out by the parking lot. Those aren't the feature columns. This is more of a look at those feature columns. And again, we think that there can be messaging, interpretation on there. We're actually still looking at an option where it may actually be the angel's name. So there's a couple of things that we still need to resolve. again, trying to respond to the committee members' comments. So, but again, a very nice area. The way these columns are arranged, it provides for kind of a louvered view in, so it really, they kind of help screen that area off of Orange Avenue.
It
But-
also baffles
Yeah.
the noise from the road as well. So we thought that was really important as we work through the design.
Yes, absolutely. And this this is the Orange Avenue frontage. Again, we saw from that site analysis that the noise really impacts that. So the idea was to put some transparent glass panels along that edge. Does two things. Number one, it helps a lot with the sound. When we ran the sound model with these in place, it really kind of helps take that sound away. But it also then provides that color. Again, the committee, I think we got beat up the first time because everything was white. There was no color. So again, so as it evolved as a team, putting these ideas together, we really found some very creative ways to incorporate the rainbow colors into the memorial. This is a night view of that Angel Ellipse. Again, lots of opportunity for lighting. We do believe that this is going to be accessible 24/7. Not the visitor pavilion, but there will always be access. People who are coming from out of town, they want to stop by it all the time. So we think that nighttime effect and ambiance is super important. And from a security also, we envision that there will be cameras out here as well, for 24/7 access. The Healing Garden Zone, this is that zone between the totally public space, on Esther, and then that more private space inside the ellipse, and then eventually getting into the memorial itself. So we're creating these zones as you come in. Again, a nice landscape space, shade trees, seating, so that you can kind of be outside before you make your way in, because it is kind of an emotional sequence as you are approaching the center of the memorial itself.
And I think we even heard from the committee about being able to come off the path. Emotionally, you may need a space that you can decompress before you got on the path, and we felt this was a great opportunity for that.
Absolutely. And then we did want to address Esther Street itself. And so this is kind of like the overall view. So again, you can see this is that kind of that louvered view. So from Esther, which is a more quiet street, you can see in, it becomes more opaque along Orange Avenue. But again, this allows you to see a new streetscape along Esther. Currently, there's curb cuts and a small sidewalk. And so we wanted to clean that up along this edge with street trees and new street lighting. So this is the look along Esther. The other thing that we did by cleaning this up, because there's curb cuts that are no parking zones, there's basically controlled like 15-minute parking there today. And so we do think that the parking lot that we've got up by the visitor pavilion is very small. It's primarily handicapped. We'll get a couple other spaces in there probably. But so most of the folks will be parking out here on Esther, we believe. So by cleaning up that streetscape, we can get some additional parallel parking that, again, would be time restricted to an hour or whatever the city operations decides. Moving out to Orange Avenue. This is that look from Orange Avenue, and again, you can see those colored panels that are helping attenuate the sound, but are also like progressing those colors. We've got kind of what we called Prism Plaza to the left, right at that corner, because you got great views northbound on Orange Avenue. It really opens up. It's easy to see from this side. So we thought that was important. The Pulse sign, we had a lot of discussions about the Pulse sign itself, and it's just, it is not built. It's already, if you look at it closely, it's already starting to deteriorate. And so we're looking at replacing with some type of monument that still has the Pulse logo on it, doesn't say Pulse on it, because that was a big identifier along Orange Avenue. So we wanted to take that. We think that sign, as it sits today, though, would be great in that visitor pavilion. And again, that could be lit up so that all that glazing, the glass that you saw at the front, it could be sitting in that area. Again, we haven't gotten into that detail, but that was one of the thoughts we had about preserving that sign, which is so important to the folks who, this was essentially this was their party place. This is where a lot of people made a lot of friends, took their loved ones. So it's an important place in the community. This is another look at that kind of Prison Plaza. And again, this was another one of the later things where it was like, I'm not getting the cultural representation on the plan. And so one of the thoughts was to do this court of flags out on that Prison Plaza. And I think it's a very strong identifying look for here as well, because I think it's 9 various countries of origin for the folks who were taken. So it's important to include that, and I thought that was a good way to do that. This is that look out at night. Again, how this presents itself at night is extremely important. With that, we'll move into the memorial site itself. There's 2 pages of bullets on that I won't read, but this is the view kind of from above. This is looking like if you're kind of hovering over Orange Avenue. So what I'll point out again is you've got this line, which is essentially, that is the footprint of the Pulse building where it sits today. So the components, we have the reflection pool here. We have a water wall, tribute wall along this edge. So that does a couple things. Number one, that's one of the options for where we put the names, but also it separates the Pulse Memorial from the adjacent land use, which is that auto kind of service place. So we really want to separate ourselves from that. So this is a great way to do that because it brings people close to that edge, but again, they can't see all the stuff that's going on next door. And then we've also, around this center court area, very simple, very clean, we've got seating that's in there as well as seating on this reflection pond itself. And this is one of those, again, a very collaborative space. One of the committee members wrote out a quote for us and after the meeting said this quote was important to us, and it's for all those who just wanted to dance. And that went out right after the Pulse Memorial, and it really kind of like led us in a whole different design direction. You know, how do you actually do this? And so what we've done on the water wall, the idea on that water wall was to actually have a token for each of the folks who were taken. But one of the thoughts is, could they be shoes as representative in like a dancing form? Because again, the individuals, this is also about moving on, right? And so they were at Pulse for that joyful time. So are there ways that we can represent those individuals in that? We've since said it may not be all these shoes, it may be something else that represents that individual, but we're pretty confident that with the technology that we've got right now, if there's a memento that you could scan that in and then cast that into a more permanent material on each of these, what we'll call shelves. What's depicted here are shoes. We've said that the shoes don't want to be static like that, so they could be in different kind of forms. But I think it would be very personable. It also talks to that idea of dancing. And then on each of those shelves, you can see that you would have the shoe or the other memento, a place for flowers, the angel's name, as well as a flag for their country of origin. So, and again, we don't know what the final design of that is going to look like, but that is the idea. And so that when you're on that wall, so there's water that's running behind that, and again, that's got noise to it, which again helps with the mitigation of the sound, but also is that kind of peaceful, regenerative feeling of water. Here's another view. At the far end is what we called the obelisk. At that point in time, it was representing the holes that were created that allow the people who were inside to get out of the Pulse building. That's another option that we have a couple options still that are going on. That design piece is not fully resolved. Do you want to say anything on that?
No, I think you got it.
All right. And then here's a look at the reflection pool with the water wall to the right and the seat wall. So again, a very contemplative space. We've got trees on the inside of this to provide shade as well. And again, with the more permanent, harder shade on the outside on that angel's ellipse. And then this is kind of looking back kind of towards Orange Avenue of that space. Again, this would be a night shot. In the reflection pool, the idea on the reflection pool is it would actually be very shallow. So the water would be very close to you. So if you were sitting on those walls, you could touch that water as well. So again, you're very close to it. And then we were talking about kind of that obelisk. So, and again, this is that working together with the committee. People weren't comfortable with it. There's a lot of discussion. Do we actually save a piece of the wall of the building that has those breaches in it, which is represented in option 3? And we could save that right in place. And then option 2 was kind of took the idea of that obelisk, but moved it to that primary pathway that leads out to the Survivor Common. So people who were in the memorial would actually pass through that gap to the Survivors Common. So again, you're in the memorial where the event took place, but then you pass through out to that Survivors Common. So there's certainly a sense of a portal with that. And so those two ideas are still, yet to be totally resolved, but that will happen as we go into the next phases. Here's a look at that kind of the portal idea, and then this is if we were to take that actual wall as it stands. I mean, we would have to do preservation on it because it's going to be exposed to the elements, but it's something you could do. On the bottom of this, you can see that the committee, we didn't reach a definitive consensus on this, but I'll add trauma and mental health consultants. And this was kind of what we talked about. We expressed concern about the traumatic effects of leaving that wall in place. We had a tour and saw it, and again, it's very emotional and jarring, and so that's ultimately one of the things that does need to be resolved, and the design build team they're going to explore that as we get towards 30% design, and then that would come back to the committee. So those options. And then the angels' names, and so what I presented was the water wall with the shoes. One of the other ideas that the committee or some of the committee members certainly wanted us to explore was using those 49 columns as the actual spot. So this was the angels' names, we've gone through that. So this would be an alternative for the angels' name. So in my mind, we would still have the water wall, but we would take the shoes off, and then each of these columns, the 49 signature columns, would have an individual's name there, and we'd have seating incorporated into that. So again, there's pluses and minuses to each of those, but much like that obelisk, I think that needs to be refined further as we get into the design process.
And we did decide not to have both, right? So
Yeah.
you don't want them in both locations. You want it to be in one location. It adds to the importance of it. So the committee and all of us to decide. So that's why we have options, but not both.
Correct. But the water wall could still be there, but with the phrase on it. Again, so it would still be an effective piece. We would just take the names off the water wall. I think, do you want to hit technology
Sure.
interpretation?
I love technology.
I know you do, so.
So we did talk a lot about the existing Pulse building and what it means and what it means on site. We also looked at design ideas that were better without it there. And one of the ideas that we have is that you can LiDAR scan this building. We can preserve it digitally. You can pull it up anytime you'd like on your phone or your iPad, but also in the visitor center or the visitor area, you could also bring that up. Similar to Jimmy Carter's house, you can see that anywhere in the world. You could also see the Pulse building, the existing building, anywhere in the world. So we thought this was a good opportunity to preserve it and always to have it.
Yeah, and I'll just add again, it was very emotional. I mean, I
Yes.
think for the committee, this was probably one of the hardest things is do we keep the building or do we take the building down? And so, again, I thought that it will be preserved digitally forever. Wayne did some assessment with some of his
Yeah.
architects, and it's very difficult to keep it there.
The building wasn't made to stand the test of time, so to speak. This is a 100, 200, 300-year memorial. And the building that's in place is a retail building, not designed to be 200, 300, 400 years old, without considerable preservation constantly happening. I think we also looked at other things on the site that made it favorable for the design.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, this is also, when we talk about the technology and the interpretation, it's really important to have that security cameras in place and also to have lighting, again, for that 24/7 operation of the site itself. And then also event power, audio on the site as well. Music is an important part of Pulse, so we think that having music on the site is going to also be important long-term. And so that's kind of the overview of the site and the design. And with that, we've got a little video that kind of gives you a look at it. And again, you can see that angel ellipse that kind of encompasses the entire memorial area. This is kind of a good view where you could see the commons as it relates to that area, the Prism Plaza and the flags. And I should really say, Wayne and I get the credit, but each of our firms have a full team who's worked very hard on this.
And you also see the outline of the building that we put in multiple colors with a
Yeah.
tile pattern, so the exact outline based on the drawings.
Yeah, and again, that's one of the things that was suggested, by, I think, Tommy, I think that was your idea to put the tile mosaic around the footprint of the building. So, and then this is, passing through the memorial out into the commons. We do think having the date in a prominent position, again, this is going to be determined based on that final design of the obelisk or the portal.
We tried to capture all the important parts in this video so you get a sense of scale and size and meaning in space, which is really important to any memorial. So we tried to capture this with not just the still, but with the animation too. And Jay did mention this wall and how it blocks the site behind it, but it creates the backdrop for the location of the Pulse building. There is a arbor above that to shade folks that may stand under it to provide shading from the sun.
I think that's the end of the video.
Yep.
So. But with that, I think we're going to turn it back over to Heather.
Yeah.
The passing of the remote, we got really good at that going throughout the
Okay, thank you, Wayne and Jay. Your contributions were really incredibly impactful to this entire process. So now that the committee has finished their work, what's next? Next week, we expect to release a design build RFP. And typically that's about 30 days in our city process. We're actually going to release that for 90 days to allow for hopefully some additional outreach and to really solicit a top-notch design build firm. After that, we are expecting that the rankings and the contract for that will come to council this summer. And we've also committed that to the committee to stay up to date on this process. So at the 30 and 60% to design marks, we'll be bringing the committee back together for a public update. We are hopeful that on this timeline, design will commence next summer, and that we can commence construction the summer of 2026, which is the 10-year mark since the tragedy, with completion the second half of 2027. A cost estimate was not done as part of the conceptual design process, but the committee and the designers were aware of the city's funding commitment and considered that as they were creating designs, as well as the directive to create a design that had minimal maintenance costs. We know there'll be some maintenance, but we wanted to minimize that maintenance cost just for ongoing operational considerations. The city has committed $7.5 million for the design and construction of the memorial, and we're having early conversations with other public and private partners for additional funding considerations. One funding source is the state legislature. There is an appropriation request being sponsored by our delegation members that represent the Pulse site in the House and the Senate, so Representative Escamani and Senator Smith. It's approximately $400,000, and this funding was originally appropriated by the legislature in 2019, and we are seeking the reappropriation of this money to go to the City of Orlando. This money initially went to the One Pulse Foundation and was returned when they dissolved. So based on these ongoing conversations, Mayor Dyer's directed staff to put a total budget for the design build in the RFP of $12 million for the design that you've seen today. Additionally, when the One Pulse Foundation was dissolving, they were preparing to sell the property behind the Pulse site that you saw was incorporated into this design. Anticipating that there would be a need for that property as we built this memorial, a local businessman agreed to purchase this doctor's office property so that the city could utilize this property as it was doing the design if needed. We anticipate we will bring the purchase of this property to council this summer with a commitment of purchasing it for what the businessman purchased it from the One Pulse Foundation. I'd like to thank, we've done a lot of thank yous. We haven't thanked our translators who have been with us since the very first press conference. We had 4 at every meeting, but 2 of them, Denise and Richard, were with us at every meeting. They're here somewhere in the back. They've been instrumental in this process. I'd also like to thank the city staff. There have been so many departments that touched this project, from communications to economic development to public works, legal, the clerk's office, and multicultural affairs. We couldn't have done this project and this process without all of those departments working together. I'd like to thank the 18 members of the Memorial Committee. It's really hard to put into words just how powerful it was to watch this group do their work through such a difficult and emotional process. They really put their personal feelings aside and really focused on honoring the 49 victims. And it was really just an honor and a privilege to be able to have the opportunity to watch them do their work. And because of their commitment, recognize them all again, but because of their commitment, I believe that we have a meaningful memorial design concept that will pay tribute to the 49 angels that were taken from us on June 12th. And at this time, we will take any questions.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. And again, I'm so pleased with the result of and where we're at, and I'm pleased that we're going to be able to get this completed prior to me no longer being mayor. It's important to me in that aspect as well. Okay, thoughts, comments, Commissioner Sheehan.
Thank you, Mayor Dyer. And Heather, I too would like to thank all the employees who were there from the very beginning when this happened. When I first got here, there was a group of employees who were not openly gay, who were closeted because they didn't have protections. And to see the change with applying the protections for city employees, to seeing city employees leaving their desk for months to help at the assistance center and through all this process is inspiring. And I want to thank every one of you who did that, because you have not been properly, I don't think, thanked for that. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who was part of this, because it wasn't just the gay employees, it was everyone across the spectrum of employees. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I really do feel that's the reason why we were able to raise $32 million that directly benefited the families and the victims of this massacre. And it was very, very critically important work, so thank you for that. To Catalyst and Baker Barrios, beautiful, beautiful work. You know, this is kind of emotional for me because this brings up a lot. And again, Heather, thank you, because I needed some space and time to heal myself. I got to know 38 of the 49 families who lost someone, and it was a very difficult time. So thank you for the committee to taking it to the next level, because in the beginning, Mayor Dyer and I had to be the voice for the voiceless, and then you have found your voice and brought it forward. So thank you to every one of you who served. Thank you so much. And Nancy, for your cultural competency and for insisting on everything to be in Spanish. That was critically important to this process. So thank you for that as well, for everyone who you know, was part of that. Again, I think it's important to emphasize that we just got this property a year ago. None of us on the council, you know, benefited at all from One Pulse. As a matter of fact, they kind of messed things up for us, and now we have to move forward. Again, to the committee, your respectful representation and caring and taking a very difficult and emotional situation and moving it forward in a way that was respectful, because a lot of these conversations were not easy, especially about, you know, we take the building down, do we leave the building, all those kinds of things. I know we're very emotionally fraught. I personally still struggle with this idea of leaving one of the walls, because I kind of feel like this is a sore on our community and we need to move forward and tear it down. But, you know, that's just my own feeling from having been there from, you know, from day one. I also just want to say that there should be no admission fee for this. There should be no perception of any profit for anyone, because I think that's part of the horrible things that happened at One Pulse, was that they wanted to make this a tourist attraction and to profit from it. That was disgusting. And that this needs to be a respectful, free space where people can come and pay tribute and respect to those who were lost. I like the reusing of the seating elements, because those were all donated. A lot of the things that, what people don't realize, that interim memorial was not something One Pulse Foundation paid for. That was the goodness of the community that came forward and donated. So to take some of those elements, I think, is important, because they were community donations. I think that the flags of the countries, again, is very, very important. As someone who worked with, you know, Latin communities ever since I worked for the Department of Agriculture, flags of origin are very, very important to people. And I think that's a very culturally competent way to do that. I think that we need to be sensitive with the interior and exterior views of the building, that they not be macabre. Again, with this wall, I think that we need to be respectful and not give in to people who have a macabre interest in this. That needs to be respectful and decent and loving, the way that we responded to this after this happened. And again, I just want to thank everyone who's been involved. Donna, all of you, Dr. Schooler, oh my God, the stuff you had to put up with, the anger, and then and also Raphael, you had a really hard job to do, because there was a lot of anger, and a lot of that anger got directed at you, and Mayor Dyer and I got a lot of that too. But anger is part of the cycle of grief, and you did an amazing job navigating that. So thank you for your work. So again, to every city employee, to everyone who was a part of this, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I've been openly gay. I ran for office as an openly gay person. I never thought that this would be something that I would ever deal with in my career as a public servant. But I want to thank you for allowing our community to deal with this in a respectful, decent, and loving manner. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Stewart.
Mayor, I can't add much more to that, Commissioner Sheehan, but except to say that I appreciate your sensitivity to it personally. And Commissioner Sheehan, I appreciate your sensitivity to it as well. This is a challenging issue, and the city comes in essentially late in the process for no challenge except that people couldn't accomplish what they wanted to accomplish, and we're not stuck with it. And I think that we have been uniquely sensitive to it, and I appreciate that. Heather, thank you for your leadership, and those who have been involved from the very beginning, thank you for your comments. Thank you for what you've accomplished, and look forward to continuing to have you accomplish so much of the work that we need to still do. This is not going to be completed, even when the construction is done, because the healing process is a long, long process, and our city is committed to inclusion and healing. And I want to tell you how much I appreciate that from everyone involved. So I'm not going to duplicate all those that Patty said. But Patty, thank you very much for what you said and how you said it. Thank you.
Okay, I guess one final thought. It looks like the way the conceptual design was constructed, that if we ever did acquire the, whatever that site is, the car detailing space next door, that could be incorporated in some fashion in the future if we needed to, or had the ability to. That's head nodding. Yes, you thought that?
Yes, Mayor, we could absolutely accommodate that, yes, in the design.
Okay. Well, wonderful work by everybody, and we are deeply appreciative. No further comments, then we will stand adjourned as to our meeting. And we do have an agenda review meeting, so we'll take a 2-minute break here and let people retire to the rotunda that don't really want to be in the agenda review meeting.